Hi, everyone, and thank you for sharing some of your time with us this fine day. Today, we are going to be talking about updating your design strategy with Onshape. And we're going to specifically be talking about Onshape, but really some of the ideas behind why Onshape exists, how it behaves the way it does, what features and functionality it has, really resonate through all different platforms of CAD that's available everywhere or has simplified admin characteristics and things like that. I will be passing it off to Bill Schlund, our local expert on Onshape. He'll be delivering the presentation demonstration today. We will be talking about Onshape, but as you're listening with us today, going on this fun little webinar journey, please think about how the ideas that are being presented can be applied to your business. Maybe not across the entire business, maybe just to a new product development side of things, or a certain division that needs to really operate rapidly across geographies and really get innovation out the door incredibly quickly. These are the kinds of things that Onshape can really help a company with. That's all I had, Bill. So I think I will pass it over to you and let you take it away with the topic of the day.
All right, thanks, Anthony. Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending today. I was just going to go through a couple PowerPoint slides here just to introduce Onshape, and then we'll kind of get into to what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, typical design process, engineers, designers, they want to be able to work quickly, innovate, be efficient. The things that keep them from doing that are the things that we use in your typical CAD system. We have to load software. We have PDM clients, we have VPNs to access things, FTP servers, network drives, could have security software, all kinds of things that we need to have in place before we can really start doing our work. And then once we do start creating our work, we start creating files. And if we want to share those externally or internally to our company, we end up usually making copies and sending those around. You might have a shared drive someplace where we put that, but then we have to start worrying about, are we overwriting anybody's work? Are we getting the latest information? Things like that. So then we can get more sophisticated. We put a PDM system in there. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on today, but a PDM system will always give us the latest data, latest, greatest information. But the thing is that when you check something out, you're just checking out a copy. You're just making lots and lots of files. And just the way typical CAD systems work, that's what they do. They generate files. And so we need to keep track of them, make sure we always have the latest version, things like that. And that's the way it's always been, right? That is CAD, but that isn't Onshape. So let's take a look at Onshape. Onshape is in the cloud. So that means I don't have any software to load. In fact, we just got an update to the latest version of Onshape yesterday. It comes out about every 3 weeks. And everybody gets it at the same time. So everybody's always on the same version of the software. There's no misalignment and I can't read his file because it's newer than mine or something like that. Onshape's made up of multiple aspects. So there's certainly the CAD, the creation of parts, assemblies, drawings, things like that. But there's also, when we start generating that type of data, there's a concept of data management so that we can manage that data. And then if we have that data, we also tend to have it go in different aspects for maybe change management or release management. So there's built-in release management in Onshape for workflow. So that's automatically built into the system. There is an enterprise version of Enterprise or of Onshape where we can create our own workflows if we wanted some other types of workflows potentially. We can certainly manage bills and materials. It's in the cloud. It's very secure. We're not dependent on, the Norton software that you might have loaded on your laptop or something like that. And also task management. Administration is very simple. To get somebody to use Onshape, you just need their email address. You don't have to load any software or anything like that. It runs on all the browsers, runs on Chromebooks, Androids, iPads, also Macs. So it runs on cell phones, right? So Android and iPhones. So very interesting software in and of itself.
And if someone wants to see how easy administration is, they should join our session on the 22nd at 1 p.m. Central, because that's the topic of the third webinar we're hosting this month.
Well, that's good. Now I know what it's going to be that I'm going to talk about. My administration is really easy. That's probably going to be a pretty short presentation because it is so easy, but it's really neat. I'll touch a little bit on it today, kind of the approach that that Onshape takes with things. So let's get out of our PowerPoint here. I've logged into Onshape here, and what we see across the top are models that I've just recently been working on. These folders, I can create as many folders as I want. These folders either I have created myself, like Bill stuff, or folders that other people have given me access to, where I can access other files. If I need to search for something, this is along the lines of kind of a data management search. I could search by the type of part that it is, or is it an assembly, or is it a drawing? I could say, what state is it in? Is it pending? Is it released? Is it obsolete, rejected? All of those types of things. There's also user criteria. So there's a variety of different types of metadata that we can use as filters to search on. So lots of different ways of finding information that is created in Onshape. What I'm going to do today is kind of different. I'm not going to create or make anything build off of something that already exists. I'm going to start from scratch. I wanted to show you something. And what I'm going to be doing today is working with other data, right? Non-Onshape data. So I'm going to go and create a new document. So when we create a product, we create a document. And inside this document are parts, assemblies, drawings, or other types of documents, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, JPEGs, images, things like that. Anything that helps us to develop this particular product is part of this document I'm creating here. But we'll call this, I don't know, we'll say example assembly. So this creates our document, and then in here, I can, you notice that it has a spot for me for creating an assembly. The Part Studio is really what this is. That's where we create our geometry. It's a multi-body development product. So we can create multiple bodies in a single part, but they are all separate parts. I can use them in other assemblies. I can make drawings of them, things like that. When I start to put them in an assembly, putting them together, then I can start to make maybe mechanisms, or I can start to incorporate other parts that maybe aren't part of this, but maybe some standard parts, nuts and bolts, things like that. Let's go and start to do something here. I'm going to say let's import some information. I'm going to say import. And here we have a bunch of SOLIDWORKS parts, individual parts. I'm going to import a SOLIDWORKS assembly. And if we import an assembly, if I were to grab the SLD ASM file, it would say, you're trying to read in an assembly file, please put those all in a zip file. So I did. I put all these guys in a SOLIDWORKS assembly zip file. I'm going to say, let's open that up. So when we bring it in, we can bring it in, put all the parts at 0, 0, 0, and then make an assembly of them. In this case, I'm going to say, put all the parts in their right orientation in one of our part studios here. And because it's coming from SOLIDWORKS and other systems usually have the y-axis pointing up. But I'll say, let's bring that in. So here Onshape's going in saying it's uploading the file. So it's not a huge file, 4 megabytes, kind of small actually. And then it starts to create the folders that it's going to need. In this particular case, it's going to create a part studio for us to bring in the parts. You can see that it's been added here, that part studio, and then it also has come back with a message saying translation is successful. So we'll kind of get rid of these messages. So if we look at, and actually this is the default part studio. I don't really need this anymore. That was the one that made by default. I'm just going to say, let's work with the one that it read in the parts. So if we take a look at it here, I'll turn off our planes. Here is a SOLIDWORKS assembly, right? All the components are here. And what we're going to do is work with this. So brings in all the geometry. And again, this could have been NX or CATIA or Creo or whoever can bring those in. Also Step and IGES, obviously. But as we can tell by looking at these parts, this would be kind of a mechanism, right? Someone puts their foot down here and some things happen. Right? So that's what I'm going to do is use this information and create a mechanism of it. So up until now, typical CAD system stuff, right? I've just read in a file. So here it is. I haven't made an assembly of it yet. So you'll notice that each one of these individual parts is actually kind of considered a body. I can still make drawings of these. I can reassemble these into other assemblies. That's not a problem. But I haven't got an official assembly yet. So I'm going to put those together. Since they're all placed together in the right orientation, I'm just going to kind of say, let's just use that as my assembly. So I'm going to say, let's insert all those guys into this assembly. So now that I do have an assembly, I also have a bill of materials, obviously. So the bill of material over here list out all the components that we see over here. You notice that the model tree has changed. It no longer shows individual bodies, but it's showing parts. And one of the things I might add to my bill of material here is I'll add in a column for name, and we'll kind of move that over a little bit. I'll kind of, maybe move it over one more. We don't really need description. I'll say, let's just remove that. So this will be our bill of material. We can see a bunch of individual parts here, their names, a part number. This will be something that gets assigned to them when we release it, right? That's when part numbers get assigned. And we could also put in a variety of other types of column information here to include this. This bill of material that we see here is the exact same one that will be used in a drawing should I make a drawing of this particular assembly. But now that I have this much finished, what I want to do is have someone help me with this. So I'm going to invite one of the guys from our company to help me work on this assembly, on the exact same assembly at the exact same time. That's what really sets Onshape apart, is that we can have people working on the same part together or the same assembly together. And, you know, it's really nice, great way of communicating and collaborating and keeping the design process moving. So to do that, I'm just going to use this bright blue share button. And I want to share this with somebody. You notice right now it's shared with me. Nobody else in the world knows about this. So it's sort of a whitelist. That was kind of one of the things I wanted to bring up, kind of from an admin standpoint, is we control who gets access to what. So I'm going to invite someone here from our company here, and I'll type in Nick. We have 3 Nicks. I'll grab the middle one. So I want to share this with Nick. He can edit this. He can view it. I'm going to say I want him to edit this thing. And when he edits, what can he do? I really don't want him to export this out. I don't want this data leaving anywhere, going somewhere else. I will allow him to do a link document. If he needs to assemble in other components, I'll let him do that. So if you wanted to put in some nuts and bolts from the library, or maybe some other parts that he has made, this linking documents just means he can assemble those into this assembly that we're working with. So I'm going to share this with Nick. So now it's shared with him. What happens is he gets an email saying, Bill has shared this document with you, this example assembly. So he clicks on the email and it brings him to Onshape. So this is Nick. And here's me on the assembly over here. So he logs in. And if he goes to his documents, and then actually in the hyperlink that was sent to him, it would go right to here, but he can click on this, and this brings up the assembly that we see here. And the thing is, it's the exact same assembly. So if I click on it here, now he can see it. He has the same menus. I gave him edit rights, so he has all the capabilities of Onshape to edit this geometry, add things to it or whatever. I could have given him view rights, and then all he can do is cross sections and measurements and things like that. But what I want to do is kind of explain to him what I want. So I'm going to send him a note. I'm just going to say, can you help with the assembly? I'll send that to Nick. So Nick, in his comments, sees my note right here. Can you help with this assembly? Sure, what do you want? He replies back to me. So you notice there's a built-in texting kind of capability here where we can send comments back and forth, images, or anything to kind of help communicate, because people aren't always under the same roof anymore. They aren't sitting in the same cube farm or next to each other, or even in the same building. So the great thing about Onshape, like I said, is all you need is a web browser. So you could be anywhere and access information and be able to help or do your work, your daily work. So in this particular case, you notice that Nick can see our assembly here, and over here, I've got this. One of the things he can do is kind of get into follow mode. And by doing that, whenever I zoom something, let's see if we can, I'm gonna have to move my window a little bit smaller. So you can see what happens. But you'll notice when I zoom in, Nick zooms in. My mouse is a mouse over here, but you notice what the mouse looks like on his end. It's a little hand. And so what I'm going to explain to him is that everything that touches this shaft, you notice when I pick it here, it highlights over there, all the components that touch this, I want you to group those together. So I could type that in, but save myself some typing. That's kind of the point that I'm getting across to him. And so now he knows what he needs to do. So I'm going to go back and show you, Nick starts working on this assembly while I am as well. But we'll go in here and we'll say, let's close out our comment window here. So Nick needs to grab some components here and kind of group them together. Basically everything that touches this shaft, because as the foot pedal turns the shaft, these other components are going to move as well. So I'm going to say, let's grab this component and these components, and maybe these two, and this guy. So these are all the components that touch that shaft. And he can just really go in very easily and say, hide the other components. So only the parts that are touching the shaft are displayed right now. Remember, these were brought in a SOLIDWORKS assembly, so there's no concept of, they're just all oriented in the same place, but they don't know that they're tied to one another. I could grab one of these parts and drag it around and it can go by itself. But what Nick's going to do is grab all of these parts and say, let's group them together. There's a nice little group button here, and that means that they all, where one goes, they all go. So if the shaft turns, they all turn, which is exactly what we want to have happen. Then he can come back here and say, let's show the rest of the parts. So everybody's back. So he can send me a note back saying, okay, I've done my work. So I'll come over here, take a look at it. One of the things I'm going to do, I'm working on the rest of the assembly, so I'm going to pick on this base part, and I'm going to fix that part. I'm just going to go over here and say fix it. That means he doesn't move, right? So that's locking that down. And I can take a look at what Nick did. Let's kind of pull this, give us a little bit more room. If I grab this, I move it around, yep, they all move, right? So that looks good. So he did a good job. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to take those same components that Nick did. So we'll say, let's grab this guy, that one. And let's see these guys here. Grab all of those. And in this case, I'm going to say, let's hide those. Let's hide the stuff that Nick did. So now I have these components. And actually, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to hide him as well. So the ones that we see here on the screen are really the ones that are all going to be bolted down or welded. You can see that these are going to be bolted here. There's some screws on the bottom of this guy. This is a screw. So I'm just going to grab these and I'm going to say group these. Now remember, the first one is fixed. So if I group them all together, they're all fixed, right? It's sort of my way of not having to go in and fix each individual one. So now I've got a bunch of set parts here, and I can go back and turn on the rest of these guys, bring it back in. So now we've got the work that Nick did, linking all this together and this. Now, one of the things here, I'm going to take this guy and hide him for a second. This is going to rotate. So I'm going to go in and you notice there's a lot of different types of joints that we can put in here. There's planar joints and tangent joints and cylindrical joints. So I'm going to do a revolute, which is like a pin joint. I'm going to go in and say, let's take pin joint for this guy. So that, and then we'll kind of drag him over here and we'll align it to the center of this hole here. So now we've created a pin joint on this guy so we can drag him around. So now another thing that we have with Nick's here, first of all, we have to make him probably a Revolute joint as well. with his work. So I'm just going to take this, kind of pull it out a little bit. And we're going to say, let's do, kind of another pin joint. We could say that the center of this part of the shaft, and we'll line it up with this guy right there. So now that's placed in. You'll notice that it's off by a little bit right here if we kind of take a look at this. So I'm going to use this little offset, and I can say, let's offset it maybe like 1/4 of an inch or something like that. Slide over. I can also change the angle right here. So if I needed to rotate it at a particular angle, I can set that as well here. So now I have this set. So now Nick's part, if I kind of rotate it around, his stuff works. We know this Revolute joint I put on here works, but now we need to tie these two together. So this would be a good opportunity, sort of like a cam. So we use kind of a tangent constraint. I'll just say this face lines up with that one. So now we've got some cam action going on. So if we take a look at our assembly now, and I start to move it, everything moves the way that it should. So I've created this assembly out of a bunch of parts that I imported. They could have been STEP, they could have been from anybody's system. It doesn't really matter. We treat them all the same, and it allows us to create the mechanism that we're looking at right now. At this point, this is a pretty good design. One of the things that Onshape does is it saves all the work that you've done. Every single command that I've done here is preserved. It always is. I can go back to any particular point and say, I want that to be my current point. And everything that happened after that is gone. And I can, so you never lose any work is basically all I'm saying. But what I can also do is create a particular version. I say now all this is assembled, and we can say version 1. We could say V1 is mechanism. Say create that. So now in the history tree, what we'll see is that at this particular point in time, this is when that mechanism was created. And we can see the time that it was created. So being able to audit, another admin function, is to be able to check out who did what and when they were able to do it. This system is incredibly good at keeping track of all of those type of things. So now that I have this set up, one of the things I might want to do is release this. And so I'm going to come in and say, take advantage of our release management capabilities. I'll say, let's release this product. And so here's the assembly with all the parts. It's going to be revision A. One of the things I could say is let's generate the part numbers for all those guys. So it automatically generates the part numbers. Again, I set up the scheme of how I want these things to be numbered. I set up a prefix, how many characters are in it, all of that. And we have that going forward. One of the other things that I can do is I'm going to also go in here. And I'm going to pick all the individual parts. So I'm going to hit my shift button. So we grab all of those. And I'm looking at their properties. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say exclude from the bill of materials. Now we saw before the bill of materials listed out all those parts. I'm going to say let's apply that to this right now. So we don't want those to be in the bill of materials. So why would I do this? This particular assembly here is something that we purchased, let's say, from a vendor. And so when we bring it into our top level assembly, I don't want it showing up as a bunch of individual parts. This is just a purchased, essentially a single part, as far as we're concerned, a single line item in our bill of materials, much the same way that you would do with a weldment, right? It's made up of individual components until you weld them all together. And a lot of people then at that point going forward, just assign a single part number to it. It becomes a single line item in the bill of material. So the release name here, I could just maybe copy this. And this is really kind of an engineering change. So we could just say this is ECO dash, the number here. And then I can give it the people, so I could send it to Nick or to somebody else in my company, to groups of people, send it to the management team for them to review it and to approve it or not. I can assign observers. They're just there to see, they're notified that things are in the release process. They can take a look at it, what status it is, but they can't really make any changes. It's just there to kind of keep them notified. So I might even put like a vendor in here so he knows that we're getting to this point. I'm just going to go in and say, let's just release this, right? So now it's released. Just save me the trouble of sending it to somebody else and pretending I'm them and doing that. So this part has been released. If we go over here and take a look, you notice that there's no other parts here, right? The individual parts, I said, do not show them in the bill of material. So now our bill of material is essentially empty. The only thing that will show up is the name or the part number for our assembly when we put this in our upper level assembly, right? It'll just be at that single line item that I mentioned before. So just some of the nice capabilities that are here inside of Onshape. One thing that I wanted to touch on is that what I did at this particular point is I called up an existing set of files off the disk. So I got that from somewhere. But we realized that a lot of companies have existing CAD systems, and with those existing CAD systems, they have existing PDM systems. Right? So we could have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of parts, assemblies, and drawings. I'm going to show you something here. Pop up an image here. This is a movie. The link to that movie is right here. So if you're watching this on a video, you can pause the video and type this in. But it's a description of a relationship that we have with a company, a third-party company called Casini. And what they can do is they can go into a SOLIDWORKS vault, their PDM system, and basically do a bulk migration, pulling all the information from the PDM system and bringing it into Onshape. So they're pulling out parts, assemblies, and drawings and bringing those into Onshape. So really unique capability to be able to work with existing SOLIDWORKS people, whether you have the data stored in a PDM system or not. We showed you the not, and then this is how you would do it if it was in a PDM system, using the Casini software to bulk migrate it and bring it into Onshape so that we can do what I just did earlier. So with that, that kind of brings us to a close of what I wanted to cover today. I'm going to turn it back to Anthony for any questions.
All right, excellent, Bill. Thank you. This was a great demonstration. I know when anyone's thinking of maybe integrating a new system into their pool or taking on a new system when they're doing a startup or kicking off a business, the idea of kind of changing the way you do things can be hard. And what you just showed, that was amazing. You brought in it wasn't just a rod, that was a pretty complex little part or assembly. And I'm glad that you're able to demonstrate it. We do have a couple questions in the queue. The first came in earlier. You mentioned 3-week update releases. How does that affect versions and feature compatibility?
Yep, so good question. Like I said, it does get released. Everybody, when they upgrade Onshape, since everybody goes to Onshape to use it, they all use the same software, so there's no incompatibility problems or anything like that. You can't really have old versions because everything is the latest, greatest version. You can't even save stuff in an old version. There isn't really that concept because Onshape doesn't have files. It's a database. So you can't have files that are out of date because the database is always current. I hope that explains it.
Yep, I think that did a good job. Thank you. The other question, when the BOM is suppressed just to show the assembly, like you did a few minutes back, can that be made to show the detail in another view of the BOM, like a service view of the BOM? Was that a master change, or can that be applied kind of independently to different versions? I think is a question.
That's a good question because it's a property of the part. When I went in and I picked those parts, I said, it could be the property of the part is material, its color, or whatever. In my case, it's don't show it in a bill of material. So I don't know for sure if we could make a variation of this, right? We could make a version that doesn't have that property turned on, and we could use that maybe for service or something like that.
Okay, you're talking
so
like
the
branching capabilities. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you could have a service branch and a mechanical branch and set the parts up.
Manufacturing branch. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Go crazy.
So I don't see anything else in the queue, Bill. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Everyone, thank you again for your time. And I hope to see you on the webinars later this month and, out into the future. Everyone have a great rest of your day.